Hello students, today we'll learn how to write analytical paragraph. Analytical paragraph is a newly introduced topic by CBSE for classes 9th and 10th. So first of all we need to know what is analytical paragraph. Analytical paragraph is a descriptive writing, means it's a form of writing where we need to describe the given data in linguistic form. It's done on the basis of analysis. We do the analysis through comparison and contrast of the given facts. The facts can be given in the form of chart, graph or table. So simply speaking, analysis of the given data plus the resultant write-up put together becomes analytical paragraph. Now let's discuss some important features related to analytical paragraph. So under this topic, we need to analyze and describe the given data. And as I told that the data can be given in chart, graph or table form. Brief but comprehensive. Our paragraph should be brief in size, means its word limit is given 100 to 120 words. And it should be comprehensive, means whatever the data is given in the form of chart, graph and table, after analysis we shouldn't miss out on any important information. Everything should be presented in detailed way. Then we need to make use of simple and direct language. We don't have to use metaphorical language, creative language the way we use in writing, speech and debate. Then in this we make use of tense with respect to the question. If the data is related to past, we have to use past tense. If it is related to the current situation, we have to use present tense. If we are asked to analyze the data and propose the upcoming developments and changes, then we have to use future tense. If there is a comparison of past and present, then we have to use past as well as present tense in the mixed form. Next is personal opinion is provided only if it is asked. Unlike article and speech writing, analytical paragraph is completely objective form of writing. 99% we have to write and we have to be very objective. We don't mention ourselves and what we feel, what we think, what we suppose, because there is no room for supposition, thinking. So we need to provide the data in completely objective form. We won't give our personal opinion while concluding the passage or the paragraph. But yes, in case the question demands us to give our own personal opinion regarding the given data, in that case only we can give our opinion. Next is prefer the use of passive voice. As I told that analytical paragraph is an objective form of writing. So try to use passive form of language more and more. Now format of the paragraph. There should be an introduction. Introduction should be as small as possible, giving the gist of the paragraph. And it should be within 1 or 2 lines only. Don't cross 2 lines. Body is the second part, which is the detailed analysis of the data, detailed description of the given data. And then comes conclusion, where we wind up the paragraph. Presentation of information. We need to compare and contrast the data. First of all, Just mark all those important points. Analyze the given data and then mark all the points and write them down in the point form somewhere on the margin of the paper. Then organize the data by the first mentioning the most and the least difference. The most striking difference should be mentioned in the beginning. That is the most and the least difference. Then the most striking differences should be followed by the normal differences in the data. And then at last we should mention little bit fluctuating trend or unchanging or unchanged data. So in this way we should arrange and organize the ideas. Then next is mention the quantities precisely and accurately. Whatever the data is given in the graphs, maps or charts should not be compromised with. It should be written precisely well, taking care of the microform of the data. Then make appropriate use of the connectors. This is even, very much important to bring in cohesiveness and coherence into the paragraph. So use appropriate connectors, conjunctions and linkers and the transitional phrases to give a proper flow to the ideas and the presentation of the data. These are some examples of introductory phrases to bring in variety in our language. We can start in any way, different ways. Now 3 columns are there and you need to pick up one phrase from each column and it will make your introductory phrase. Like you can say, the chart shows. If it's a chart, then we can say the chart shows. If it's a report, then the report shows. If it is in the table form, then the table shows. If the data is given in diagram form, then the diagram shows. If it is in the graph form, bar graph or line graph, then the graph shows. The data shows. The illustration shows. Illustration and presentation can be used for any form of the data. Then in place of there only you can say the given chart, the supplied chart, the provided chart or the presented chart. In place of shows you can say the given chart explains, presents, illustrates, indicates, expresses, represents or demonstrate. So thus pick up one phrase from each column and it will make your introductory phrase. Now important phrases to describe the data. Different forms of data can be there and we need to use appropriate vocabulary, the wording and the diction for that. If there is rise in the data like it's bar graph, pie chart or if it is the line graph and it sets a trend where the trend is going on upward. It shows the upward trend in the given data. So we can use the words like rapidly doubled, skyrocketed, striking increase, peaked, soaring rates, starting to rise, etc. If the given data shows the downward trend, so we can say declined, plummeted, starting to fall, dropped down, and so on and so forth. If there is no growth in the data, the presented data shows no growth at all, so we can say leveled off or stagnated, or we can say reached plateau. But if the data shows sometimes there is a rise, then drop is there, then rise and drop. So it goes on constantly. Then we have to use the word fluctuate. The given data fluctuates. The given table shows fluctuation. In this way we can move on. Describing the quantities. Suppose the data is given and we have to mention the quantity. So it can be like 25% of 50% of the given data or 100% of, in this way, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5 of something, then about 90%, almost 90%, majority, on an average, twice as much, thrice as much, 4 times as much, 5 times as much, almost equal, the highest, the lowest, very close to 10%, very close to 20%, very close to 30%, and so on. Roughly, approximately, just under 5%, just over 5%, 10%, 20%, so on and so forth. We can go on. If we have to show the relationship or we have to show the contrast, then we can use the following phrases like relationship between, similarly, in contrast with, in comparison to, but in the opposite case, however, whereas, when it comes to, as opposed to, while, striking difference, noticeable difference, etc., etc. For the concluding paragraph, we can use the concluding phrases like overall, subsequently, in all, in a nutshell, for the chart given, in short, including, therefore, to conclude, as a whole, to summarize. So these are the technical words specially for analytical writing, which will be very helping hand for we people if we learn and use them. Now these are the different forms of the data which can be given in the question. The question can contain map, like two maps of different places, or two of the for the same time, or two maps of the same place for different times can be given, and we need to analyze. We need to just mark all those striking features and then express them in the paragraph. Here obviously we can see some changes, some signs over here, but we find over here they are missing. Here some different format, but now the layout is changing a little bit. So in this way we need to mark all those striking changes and features and then take them down in point forms. Later on we need to elaborate them and it's gonna become our paragraph. The data can be given in the form of bar graph, line graph, or pie chart. There can be one pie chart or there can be multiple pie charts showing the different timings, different places, or different data. Now analysis of the data. During analysis, what to be done? What the analysis can demand from the students? So we need to study the data very carefully and write it in paragraph form using appropriate tenses. All these things we already discussed. And this data may demand to the students to compare the feature of two places, marking the similarities and dissimilarities. If the data is given, we need to compare, means we need to find out the similarities over the period of time or between the two different mode of data, and we need to find out the differences also. Similarities and differences, these two things are the core information we need to supply in the paragraph. Then write the changes happened at a place over a period of time, as we saw in the last slide that map is given. Two maps are given. One is related to the past time, one is related to the present time, and certain changes are visible, clearly visible in the maps. Now write about the present features of a place and propose the possible futures on the basis of the current analysis of the current situation. What can be the trend of the given data in future? So that is how we need to propose that the trend can go in this way. It will be the upward rise in the trend, or it can be the downward trend. Like if we talk about the stock market at present during this pandemic, if this is the situation, after 2 years, after 5 or 10 years, what can be the trend in the stock market? So that will be how we'll be proposing the future developments in the trend of the stock market. Now contextual vocabulary. By the way, these are few examples only. The vocab can be related to different areas Any form of the data can be given. But suppose the data is related to buildings, then we can use the words like, if the buildings are broken down and they are constructed, the new buildings are constructed by demolishing the old ones. So we have to use all these words like demolished, knocked down, renovated, built, constructed, developed, extended, expanded mean the same, relocated, converted or modernized. Then if we're talking about the trees and forests, so for trees and forests we can use cleared, when we cut down the trees and develop the new habitat, those buildings for factory purpose, company purpose, or for any farming purpose, or anyway whatever the use it may be of. Then cut down, chopped down, planted, if we are just planting more and more saplings and we are developing the forestry, then planted and developed. So these are the basic words which we can use for trees and forests. If we are given the data related to roads, bridges and railway lines, we can use, because roads, bridges and railway lines, they are constructed, they are laid down, they are built, or they are extended or expanded. The project can be expanded. Other facilities like hotel, park, market and so on. So we can use like opened, hotel opened, park opened, market opened, set up or developed. So these are certain words which we can use in different contexts. Now prepositions are very much important when we compare and contrast things. So these are the prominent ones which we must know when we are comparing the situation and location of the given data, like to left, to right, to south, to north, to east, to west, etc. In front of, across, behind, on, over, above, in, at, beside, of, by, etc. These are the prominent prepositions which always come in play when we describe the analyze and describe the data. Now these are certain different ways to express the same data. The data can be expressed in the form of words, in the form of percentage, or in the form of fractions. So either we can say a quarter, or we say 25%, or we can say 1/4. We can say a third, or 33%, or 1/3 of the given data. Half, 50%, or 1/2, or half. Simply speaking, this also goes for half itself. 1/2 you can say. 2/3, or we can say 66%, or 2/3. We can say 3/4, or 75%, or 3/4. So in this way, the data can be expressed in different ways. Now these are the words and phrases which show the analysis of the line graph specially. If there is upward trend, then we can say, either we can use the noun form like the climb, or we can use the verb form like climbed. The increase or increased, the rise or rose, the growth or grew, saw an increase or witnessed an increase, saw a growth or witnessed a growth, or saw a rise or witnessed a rise, hit a high of, and then we mention the data. Or if the trend is downward, we can use the drop as a noun form, or we can say dropped as verb form. The decrease or decreased, the decline or declined, the fall or fell, saw a drop, saw a fall, saw a decrease or saw a decline. We can say witnessed a drop, witnessed a fall, decrease or decline. The dip or dipped, went down or hit a low of the given data. Then some other phrases also are there which can be used as per the choice, as per the demand of the question and context. Reached a plateau, it means leveled off, stagnated, shows no growth. Remained unchanged, remained stable or remained steady. then fluctuated. If continuous rise and fall goes on, then fluctuated, doubled, tripled, or became 4 times, 5 times, so on and so forth. Now, when we describe the data, we can make use of adjectives as well as adverbs. So we can say rapid increase, or we can say increased rapidly. Any way we can go on. Sharp becomes sharply. There is a sharp fall, or we can say fell sharply. Steady, steadily. Steep, steeply. Dramatic, dramatically. Significant, significantly. Slight, slightly. Gentle, gently. So in this way, it's our choice whether we want to use adjective form of the word or the adverbial form or adverb form of the word. Now we'll see the example. The question reads, below is a graph given showing birth and death rates in a country from 1901 to 2101. Write an analytical paragraph in 100 to 150 words. So before we start, as I told that we need to analyze the given data perfectly well and should note down all those important points in point form only on the rough margin of the sheet. And when we are doing practice at home, then it should go on the paper. So to begin with, we need to start with the introduction of the given data. So what is the data about? It is mentioned in the question itself. Given graph showing birth and death rates in the country, name of the country is not mentioned, from 1901 to 2101. So we got our introduction over here. We need to make little changes over here. Given graph showing birth. So we can start like the given graph or the given data shows or expresses, explains, demonstrates, represents or presents. Any way we can start with. So let's see. X-axis and Y-axis. We need to study it very carefully because the data is related to birth rate and death rate. That is clear. So one thing is clear. Second is the birth and death rates. They are given in thousands. So starting from 10,000, 20,000 and up to 70,000. The data begins from 1901 and it goes on up to 2101 as it is mentioned in the question itself. So our introduction is clear now. The given data shows, explains or presents or represents the birth and death rates from year 1901 to 2101. This is the introductory line. Introductory part is over now. Now remaining things will come in the detail. What detail should we just find out? Compare and contrast and find out the striking differences. The biggest gap between the two and when they come to very close. So let's see. In 1901, to start with, death rate is around 9 to 10,000. It is a little below 10, so we can say around 9,000. And birth rate is 20,000. So this is the difference. Difference between death rate and birth rate is 10,000. It goes on almost the same up to here, and from this point we can say from 1941 birth rate skyrocketed. It goes on very high and reaches almost 68 to 69%. And when it hits the high, it hits the high point in 1961. So obviously the birth rate is very exponential during the 20 years starting from 1941 to 1961. This is the data. During these 20 years, birth rate is the highest. It hits the high. Then it makes a valley over here from 1961 and maybe up to over here 2-3 years. It drops down. Again it starts rising and makes a peak over here, and then again starts falling, and in 1981 it again falls down and makes a valley over here. Then in 1981 it starts rising once again and reaches to this point. So we can conclude over here it is around 1990. Around 1990 it again reached to top, and then from 1990 or 91, around this time, birth rate starts dropping and there is a gentle drop, and it goes on dropping constantly in a gentle way. So it sets a trend of downward trend. From 1981 onwards it shows the downward trend. But in contrast to birth rate, death rate goes on increasingly till 2061, and then it reaches the plateau. It levels off, it becomes stagnant, and somewhere here near 2000 or so, we can say 1991 or 2099 or so, it starts showing the decline. A little decline starts. It starts a trend of downward trend. So from this point onwards they starts falling down. Birth rate also comes down, as well as death rate also starts falling. So now this is the data we have collected from this chart. Now we'll see how to put it into paragraph form. We need 3 paragraphs: introduction, the body, and the conclusion. I have presented in 3 different colors. The very first one, red one, shows the introduction. The given graph or the given data shows birth and death rates starting from 1901 till 2101. This is introduction, sufficient. Now, because the body is main part where we'll be describing each and every part of the analysis in detail. Since 1901, the birth rate has remained more than the death rate until 2041. We can go back and we can see. This is the point here where death rate crosses the birth rate. 2041. Before 2041, birth rate was higher than death rate, but from 2041, death rate becomes more than birth rate, and it is clearly mentioned over here, and started increasing gradually. It peaked in 1961 to around 65,000. We can see over here. It reaches to the peak, and this is around 60. So in 2061, death rate hit the highest point. From 1961, birth rate has fluctuated multiple times between 50,000 and 60,000. That is birth rate. How it fluctuates? Let's have an example. From this point to this point, it is fluctuating, sometimes going high, sometimes coming down. So fluctuates multiple times between these two extremes. It's expected to decline for the coming years. Expected to decline. From this point onwards, as I told, that it shows the downward trend, and obviously it is decreasing continuously. Decline for the coming years, reaching approximately 42,000 by 2101. On the other hand, now this is the contrast created between birth rate and death rate. The death rate stood at around 10,000 in 1901 and then has increased steadily. We can see the chart. In 1901, it was around 10,000, not exactly 10,000, but it was around, it may be 9,000, 9,500 or anyway. And then it shows the steady growth up to this point, keeps increasing by and by. Steadily, it's expected to rise strikingly from 2021 before leveling off to approximately 60,000 between 2061 and 2081. Over here, it levels off. It creates a plateau. This is the time period of 20 years, 2061 and 2081. So it is expected to rise strikingly from 2021 before leveling off to approximately 60,000 between 2061 and 2081. The graph indicates a slight decline in deaths in the year 2101. We can see over here, it is a downward trend. We can see over here, the death rate is starting to come down. So all after the analysis, the data is written in linguistic form precisely well, mentioning each and everything, year, then trend, and quantity means the number and percentage. So this is the body of the paragraph. Now we need to conclude it. We'll be giving the summary of this data. The graph shows the huge gap between birth rate and death during 1961 to 2001. We can see over here, striking gap, 1961 and 2000. So during this one, we can see this is the highest gap between birth rate and death rate. However, this gap is expected to reduce in the later years. Overall, as opposed to the prevailing trends, the death rate will be more than the birth rate in the later half of the 21st century. And in this way, whatever we analyzed, we presented on the paper. This is how you need to analyze first each and every part of the given data and then write in a paragraph form. So that's all for today. Bye bye. Take care.